I'll be reading from John chapter 8, verse 12. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life."
Stand and sing together, and we'll let our kiddos head to Bible hour. Who else commands all the host of heaven? Who else could make every king bow down? Who else could whisper and darkness tremble? Only a holy God. Come and behold him, the one and the only. Cry
homework assignment this week is John chapter 7 and 8. You need to read and study along with all your other daily Bible reading and whatever discipline you have. You need to read John 7 and 8, and that's where we'll be this morning for just a little bit. Irving Jensen, early on, he was one of the early commentators of the life of Christ and actually putting it all in a harmony of the Gospels type of thing. And he was one of the first people to say, maybe not the first, to kind of break up in the simplest of outlines of Jesus' ministry, and that is there was a year of obscurity, a year of popularity, and a year of opposition. So he kind of started out and people didn't know who he was, and then as he gained popularity and his popularity exploded and he gained many disciples, and then he ends up with a year of opposition. By the time you get to John chapter 7, and John, of course, is written very different than the accounts of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, if you didn't know, comes from a different approach. By the time you get to John 7, he's already in the year of opposition. And so basically what happens, even his own brothers mock Jesus early in chapter 7. Chapter 7 begins and it says that Jesus is basically staying around Galilee, the northern part of the kingdom there, and kind of where he's from, and kind of ministering there because it's not quite his time to be arrested. There was a time plan that God knew. This is when Jesus is going to be arrested and put on trial, and all those things are going to take place. And it's not that time yet. There's still ministry to be accomplished in his time here. And so he's hanging around Galilee, and his own brothers even mock him by saying, why don't you go down to Judea? You know, it's the time of the Festival of the Tabernacles. Why don't you head on down there? Because you're not going to be famous hanging around Galilee. Judea is where you need to go. And they don't believe in it. His own brothers don't believe. And Jesus actually says to him, won't y'all go on and go to the festival down to the Jerusalem, and I'm going to kind of hang here. And he actually, of course, goes later. His brothers leave without him, which was kind of unusual. Jewish family is a huge thing, not only as the community, as a people, but obviously from the Torah, from the old law, family is big. But Jesus kind of foregoes that because, again, it's the time of opposition. So his brothers leave, and then later Jesus leaves and kind of secretly goes to Jerusalem. This is the time of the Feast of Tabernacles, sometimes called the Festival of Booths. It's actually one of the 3 pilgrimages that is commanded in the Torah that Jews had to go on. They had to go for Passover, which is months and months from now. And then 50 days after that would be Pentecost. So you go for the Passover, and then you go for Pentecost. Very often, families would not travel back and forth. They might stay close to Jerusalem for those 50 days, maybe with extended family. But you had to go for those. And then you had to go for the Festival of Tabernacles, Festival of Tents. In Hebrew, it's called Sukkoth. Sukkoth, and that's actually plural for a hut or a dwelling. And they're going to commemorate for a week. They're going to live in these little huts and commemorate the wilderness wandering when Moses led the people around the wilderness for the 40 years before they took the promised land back in the books of Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, those 40 years. And that's what they're commemorating. You would actually live in these little huts, Sukkoths, and you would commemorate that in and around the walls of Jerusalem and outside the temple. This is actually one of the reasons Herod the Great, who refurbished the temple that Jesus mentioned several times, he had refurbished the temple and built all these extra courtyards around the main temple for the commerce. It was not so much a religion to him as a money grab. And this is one of the festivals that he had done this for because people would come into town, and there's not a lot to do on this festival. You come and they would gather myrtle branches, palm fronds, a willow branch, and then you had to get this certain citrus fruit from the hadar tree, and you would hold these 4 things, these 3 branches and this citrus fruit, and say your prayers each day commemorating different parts of the wilderness wandering. Now, technically, you're supposed to gather those things yourself. But as time had gone on, it's just a lot easier to buy them when you get to Jerusalem. So guess what? Merchants are going to set up tables and sell those things. Herod wants his cut, so what's he do? He builds a flea market around the temple. That's exactly what he does, and makes a lot of money because of that. And so they travel to Jerusalem for this festival each year, and they stay there for a week. So Jesus slides into town sort of on the secret. Jerusalem will be full of people since it's a commanded pilgrimage festival, so everybody will be there. And for the first half of the festival, he just sort of stays on the sly, hides out, and the town, Jerusalem, the city, is all abuzz. Will he be here? The Pharisees are already talking about it. If he shows up, we're gonna arrest him. We're gonna take this guy. And they're already talking about it, and other people are going, should we though? We're not sure. And they're like, yes, we should. And they keep arguing with each other. Should they stop Jesus and have him arrested? And he kind of stays secret for the first half of the week. And then midweek, he comes to the temple. And he comes to the temple because that's where everybody is. And he steps up and he begins to preach. And he begins to teach. And he begins to witness to them This is who I am. Not hiding. I know what's going on. And he gives powerful messages. He said, these are not my words. These are words of God the Father. So if you're opposing me, you're opposing God. And then he gives words that we sing quite often. If you are thirsty, come to me. All the people that are thirsty, I give you living water. This is why I am here. And he begins to preach that. And it really stirs up the people. And people begin to say, this has to be the Messiah. Nobody could perform more miracles, more signs of wonder than that. This has to be the Messiah. And the Pharisees and the chief priests and these people are going, no, it can't be the Messiah. He said, nobody that knows anything believes that this guy's the Messiah. The common people are ignorant. That's why they follow. Us educated people know that this can't be the Messiah. And they begin to argue about little things, just little trivial tidbits of things that aren't even true, but that's what they focus on. In fact, they send the temple guard. They're like, go arrest this man. We've got to stop this because not only, it's not a secret now, is he in town? Is he going to show up? Oh, he's here. Big entrance. So they send the temple guard to arrest him. And the temple guard comes back. And they go, you had one job. Arrest this man. They're like, we couldn't. Why not? We've never heard anybody talk like this man. The messages he's giving, he may be the Messiah. No, he's not the Messiah. He can't be the Messiah. He's from Galilee. Who's from Galilee? No prophets are from Galilee. Actually, that's not true. They didn't know, but they didn't really study. But he's not from Galilee. He can't be. Our man Nicodemus. Remember Nicodemus? This is the guy. He's like, maybe we should listen to him first before we convict him. We haven't even talked to this guy, and you're ready to arrest him and convict him, and we haven't even, maybe we should bring him in, because that is sort of the law, and maybe I kind of want to hear him myself again, because remember, this is Nicodemus. This is John chapter 3 Nicodemus. This is the guy, the born-again conversation. John 3:16, for God so loved the world. This is the guy. And he's going, maybe we should listen to him. And the Pharisees and chief priests are like, are you from Galilee too? What's going on? Galilee. This guy's not from, the Messiah's not from Galilee. Do you want to follow him too? What's going on? You and the temple guards first, and now you. Who believes this guy? I do. Now, and that's the end of chapter 7, actually. And then something very interesting happens. Chapter 8 begins, and it's the account, if you didn't know, and if you're not cheating and reading right now, so you can't do this at home, you can't do your homework right now, we're in class. Do your homework at home. But chapter 8 starts, and it's the account of the woman caught in adultery. Now, if you have a study Bible, and maybe many of you probably already know, that there may be a little footnote that says chapter 7, verse 53 through chapter 8, verse 11 was not in the early manuscripts of the Greek New Testament. It's not in the early scrolls. And so we've kind of plunked it down there because it sort of fits. It happens in Jerusalem at the temple. And this account of the adulterous woman, by the way, one of my favorite accounts of Jesus' ministry is this account. There's so many facets to study with Jesus and his interaction with these accusers, with the woman. It's the writing on the ground, the few words he says, and yet they're so powerful, the impact that he has in just a few statements. He doesn't say much in that account at all in those few verses. I love to teach and preach on that and study on that. But the fact that it's been kind of placed there, do I believe it belongs in Scripture? 100%. Do I believe it happened? Absolutely. I do think it's misplaced. I think it probably either comes earlier in the book of John, maybe at other places, maybe later, even in this same time, because he is in Jerusalem at the temple, maybe. Actually, most people that are smarter than me, which is a lot of people, but most commentators that are smarter than me think that John didn't write it all. Luke actually wrote it. And we've sort of misplaced it. And all the handwritten copying of manuscripts, it sort of got lost in the shuffle, and we've plunked it down here. Maybe it is in the right place. It really doesn't change the meaning. But just for that argument, let's take it out. And then read how that goes. So you go from the end of chapter 7, where they're arguing over whether or not they can arrest Jesus, and the fact that no prophet ever comes from Galilee. And then you jump down to chapter 8, verse 12, which Caleb read, Walt, just a minute ago. So you go from no prophet comes from Galilee to I am the light of the world. So you go from, what are you doing? Why didn't you arrest him? Why didn't you? To one of the most powerful statements Jesus ever made. Now let's dwell on the first part, and that is this whole prophets in Galilee, and is this the Messiah, and why didn't you arrest him? I really think that the people on this occasion, the Pharisees and chief priests, and a lot of other people along with them, perhaps, are not too different than me a lot of times. As we kind of look at the world, and it doesn't take much. The world's a dark place. There's a lot of bad going on in the world. From war, famine, hatred, racism. Now we have starvation, homelessness, natural disasters. Now we have, things like the coronavirus and everything, and just negative, dark. But I'm afraid sometimes, because it's so dark, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to spiritual life, when it comes to being a disciple of Jesus, we can't see the forest for the trees. We believe it's there, but we're so caught up in the noise of the darkness of the world that we fail to see and to hear exactly what Jesus has said. These poor Pharisees and chief priests and other people too are caught up in, he's from Galilee. I've heard he's from Nazareth. His own brothers don't believe in him. He stirred the people up. He's blaspheming, saying he's God. He's doing all these. They can't see the forest for the trees. The fact that he performs miracles on the Sabbath. You did say he performs miracles. Yeah, but on the Sabbath, no, performs miracles. They can't see the forest for the trees, but I'm afraid we do the same thing. We're so caught up now in the darkness. We fail to see that through many of these negative things. Now, don't get me wrong, I would never pray for bad things to happen, for these bad things to keep existing. But we all know they're going to continue to exist because it's a dark world. There's darkness in the world. I don't pray for natural disasters and diseases. I'm not praying for that. But through many of these things, as we sit around and talk about how bad they are, we miss the opportunity that they are. You got a refugee crisis going on in Turkey and Greece, tens of thousands flooding the shore, ready to be taught the gospel of Jesus Christ. And all we want to talk about is how politically we can solve the problem. We got people hating on each other in our very town, right out just for whatever reason. Opportunity to share Jesus Christ. People struggling with this issue and this problem, and opportunity to share Jesus Christ. And we just want to complain and we're scared, we're frightened. And I'm like, did you miss the fact that Jesus provides the peace that passes understanding? That He's greater than all of this? All of this. But I do believe, firmly believe, whether you take out the first 11 verses or not, the last conversation these people were having before they scatter and go home and come back to the temple and hear Jesus on another day or maybe later that afternoon is, He can't be the Messiah. He's from Galilee, and that's why I know He leads off with this. I am the light of the world. Now, this is only the second of 7 I am statements in the book of John, and John's sort of built around these 7 statements. This is number 2, and they're all huge statements, but I'm not sure they get any bigger than this one. I am the light of the world. You know what light he's talking about? The Jews would know. To us, it's like, ooh, that's a cool statement. I'm the light of the world. No, they would know exactly what he's talking about. I'm the light when God said, let there be light. I'm that. I am God. I'm the light that led you through the wilderness as a pillar of fire. I'm the light in the burning bush that calls Moses out. I'm the light in Psalm 104. It says, wrap yourself in this light, this garment. And it's like a cloak you put around you. I'm the light, and Proverbs says, your teaching is a light to me. I'm the light in Ezekiel that makes the rainbow shine because the voice of God is that powerful. I'm the light in the book of Esther that says, after Mordecai and Esther saved the people through God's power, that it was a day of joy and light. I'm that light. When I say I am the light of the world, I am God. And yes, it's a dark world. It's the same light in John chapter 1 where it says, and the light shined in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Yes, it's a dark world. Jesus is the light. Instead of complaining about the darkness, shine the light. Tell people about Jesus. Yes, all these terrible problems. Yes, do we need to work on them? Yes, do we need to minister to these people? But at the same time, you go, I'm doing this because I want to serve Jesus. I'm doing this to be His hands and feet. Let me tell you why I'm doing this, because I believe in the light. I have to tell you that Karen and I went and visited Miss Sandra last Sunday and had communion with her, and I told her I was preaching this Sunday. And by the way, speaking of a light, that woman is a light. And you just can't, and she's laid up with some ailments, and yet you'd never know it. But anyway, we're in the, and I told her I was preaching this Sunday, and she said, well, pick a good moment, and said, that's right, Danny. So there you go, that's for Miss Sandra. Because she's going to be watching. I got you. Big heart. Jesus is the light. Instead of complaining about the darkness, shine some light. Shine some light. In all seriousness, we're reading and singing and praying with Miss Sandra last Sunday, and I go, man, what a light. I feel better just being with her. Just hanging out. Or do you have that attitude? Or is it all can't see the forest for the trees? He is the light. Then he goes on, this is really awesome. He goes on after that, and they kind of go back and forth, and they're like, man, we're trying to understand your teaching. And he goes on, he says, you want to know God? Do you want to know God? And they're like, of course we want to know God. He said, then you need to know me. If you want to know the Father, you need to know the Son. You know, it's interesting, you read all kinds of polls and statistics, and they say that most people in the United States, and a lot of people in the world, in fact, believe in God. But they don't know God because they don't know the Son. They just know of God. And there's a huge, huge difference. You want to know God? You have to know the Son. You need to study the Son. How do you get to know Jesus? You want to know God? You got to know Jesus. How do you know Jesus? You got to be reading His Word. Not just John 7 and 8 for your homework. You need to be reading it. You need to be studying. It's the same thing I say almost every month when I get up here. You need to be studying. You need to be praying specifically to show me how to be like Jesus. Show me how to treat others like Jesus. And whatever the cost of that is, make me willing to accept it. Help me to be the light. You want to know the Father? Know the Son. How do you know the Son? Study and pray. And I'll tell you how else you know the Son. The disciples discovered this. As Jesus began to send them out on many missions and little small excursions, and they would come back with all these stories and all these accounts and all this experience. You want to know the Son? Get busy teaching the Son. The teacher always learns more than the student. I'm here to tell you, I'm a teacher. No matter how good you are, the teacher learns more. You want to know the Son? Get busy teaching Him. Get busy serving in the name of the Son, telling others, witnessing to them, testifying to them, showing them this is who Jesus is. A few months ago, back in December, I stood up here and I said, hey, for the year, and I'm not a big resolution guy, but do you remember this? You remember this? Faintly, maybe a little bit. I said, you need to pick out one person. Pick one. Pick one and start praying about that person, because you're going to teach them Jesus this year. You got a year. So start out and pick a person. And then you're going to pray about it and pray about it and pray about it for the Spirit to fill your heart with the words that you need to tell that person. If you picked your person, hey, we're in March. We're in March. No excuses. You picked your person. Have you been praying about them? If you have, now it's time to start talking. Inviting them along. Getting them to Bible study. Maybe get a coffee. Talking to them about life, about the light, about how Jesus shined in the light, and the darkness shined the light in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it, cannot extinguish it. First, you got to pick your one. If you haven't, test day's coming. Got to be studying. Got to be going. You got to get that person. And then you got to be praying about it. And then you got to start talking. That's how you come to know the Son. You want to know the Father? Know the Son. That's why Jesus Himself said, go into all the world, teaching the gospel and baptizing people. Why do we baptize? To be like Jesus. Jesus is going to, not long from the time in John chapter 7 and 8, He's going to be back in Jerusalem for the Passover, and He's going to be arrested, and He's going to be put on trial, and then He's going to be crucified, and then He's going to be dead, buried, and resurrected. And that's exactly what baptism is. That's what Romans 6 tells us. Don't you know all of us have been baptized into His death, but raised to walk in a new life. It's exactly what that is. You want to be like Jesus. You want to know the Father? Know the Son. Confess that He is Lord. Repent in your heart and say, I want to be like Him, dead, buried, and resurrected. You know, this came up some weeks ago. I was trying to counsel some kids. They came to me, we'd lost a ball game, and I'm listening. They actually didn't come to me. I'd overheard them. I kind of butted in on them, which is kind of what I do, And they were talking about that we had lost, and they were discussing the loss and this and that and this and that and this and that. And a little bit, they're starting to sound kind of like the Pharisees. I think they couldn't see the forest for the trees. And an old phrase that somebody taught me a long time ago, and it's so weird because I told them this, and then just like a week or so ago, I saw it pop up on Twitter. I'm like, they follow me around? What are they doing? And they didn't quote me, which is really disappointing. But, it's the way it works. And so this is not new with me, but if somebody taught me this a long time ago. Winners know why they win. Losers don't know why they lose. So they make excuses. I get that again. Winners know why they win. They know what it took. Champions know why they win. Losers don't know why they lose, so they make excuses. And that's kind of what I was trying to tell those boys. I'm like, let me give you a little life lesson right here. Of course, they look at me, like I had 6 eyeballs. But anyway, somebody got it. Somebody got it. And I think about that as I was studying for this lesson this week some, and I think about that, and sometimes I wonder if that's not us. Sometimes. Winners, champions, truly saved. I can tell you why I'm saved. I can tell you where the victory comes from. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Those that make excuses, maybe why you hadn't picked a person, maybe why you're not studying like you should, maybe why your prayer life's not where it should be. Those that make excuses, they don't know why they're losing. But it's real simple. Victory's in Jesus. Victory's in Jesus. You want to know the Father? Know the Son. Get to studying. Pick your person. Be unashamed to tell others about Christ. Be unashamed to be the light that God calls us to be. I am the light of the world. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. There are people here this morning that need to come to the light. They need to be like Jesus. They need to know the Father through the Son. They need to repent in their heart. They need to confess that He is Lord. They need to be baptized, dead, buried, and resurrected. Maybe they just need to come to the light because they've just kind of been going through the motions and can't see the forest for the trees, and you just need to turn around and go, there's the light. I need to come to it. We'll have some shepherds down front. We'll have some back in the library. If you have a need, say, I need to come to the light. I need to know the Father, and I can only do that through the Son. If you have those needs this morning, won't you come while we stand and sing?
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you.
So teach